This week, I'm going to lead you through a Yin Yoga practice for the hip area. We're going to go through a rather restorative Yin practice, focusing on the hip area, but also accessing the legs, the spine, maybe the shoulders as well. So this might be a releasing practice for your whole body. Let's get started. The only prop I'm going to use today is a bolster, but you might have blocks, blankets, pillows, any props that you normally use in your Yin practice around your mat before we get started, because you never know what props you might want to use. But when you have everything ready, we're going to start from a seat. This could be a cross-legged seat, or you might sit on your knees. Try to find a seat where you feel you can move your pelvis. We're going to start with some subtle movement for the hips, for the pelvic area, before we then go into our longer Yin poses. So give yourself a moment to find that seat. And then you could rest your hands on your knees, or you could bring your hands on your lap, wherever you feel that you can soften your arms, your shoulders. And just take a couple of breaths in and out here. Allow your shoulders to drop away from the ears. And see if you could send your breaths all the way down towards the belly, all the way down towards the pelvic floor. So allowing your breaths to sink downwards. And then just let the exhalations float back up, releasing tension. There might be tension that you don't need right now for the seat. And then with your next couple of breaths, start to look for a tilting movement in your pelvis. So I'm suggesting as you exhale, slightly tilt your pelvis back. You might round your back as well, but you're kind of leaning the weight towards the back of the pelvis. And then as you inhale, let your pelvis tilt forward, a bit like turning your tail behind you. So now you're tilting your pelvis forward, and you might even find a bit of a back bend in your spine if that feels good. And again, breathing out, tilt your pelvis back. You might round your back. As you inhale, tilt the pelvis forward. So again, a bit like showing your tail behind you. And we continue this movement, this kind of rocking movement back and forth a few times. Start to follow your own breath. And if you want to change that breath pattern, you might also exhale as you tilt forward. You might inhale as you tilt back. As long as you're breathing and trying to find the breath to support the movement, then you're doing great. You don't have to follow my breath pattern, but just continue that rocking movement. So you're tilting the pelvis, looking for some movement in the hips, in the pelvic area. Let's do one more time. Rocking the pelvis back, maybe rounding the spine. You decide how big the movement is. And then inhaling, tilting the pelvis forward. Maybe kind of arching the spine, finding a bit of back bend, and then bring yourself to center. What feels like center to you? And from there, we're going to start to explore some circling movement. So now we start to circle the weight from one side of the pelvis to the other, from back to front. So you could visualize you're trying to circle the weight along a circle. So drawing a circle as you're moving the weight from one side, one part of the pelvis to the other. And it might help to kind of visualize that movement going up to the spine as well. A bit like a disco cat movement, but now in a seat. So circling the weight from left hip to the front, to the right, to the back of the pelvis. You decide how small or how big the movement is. And that tilting is still happening there. Maybe not as in a as big way as before, but it's still going on. And then change direction. We're just trying to send some awareness, some articulation to the pelvic area, to the hips. Kind of becoming aware of how the pelvis can move, how much movement you find one way and the other. Just gently mobilizing the hips. We have several long poses, yin poses coming up. So just allowing that movement now in the beginning. Let's do a couple more circles. You can check, are you still breathing? Is the breath still there as well, moving in, moving out? And then slowly bring yourself to center. What feels like center to you now? And then from whatever seat you've had, bring yourself to a cross-legged seat. You can decide to have your left leg or right leg in front. And now if you have your bolster or some pillows, blocks, you could bring them in front of you or just close by. We're going to go into a cross-legged forward bend. You can adjust the angles in your knees, you can flex, you can point the ankles. Inhale, and as you exhale, start to slightly lean, tilt the pelvis forward. So looking for that pelvic tilt forward. Maybe you start with a straight back and just tilting forward from the pelvis first. You could walk hands further forward and just starting to feel, kind of explore how much of a tilt you can find, what feels comfortable in this moment. And then slowly with your next couple of breaths, continue rounding your spine. You might use some props under your head, maybe under the chest if that feels better. You might turn head to one side or the other if that feels better. And just notice where you feel this forward bend. I'm suggesting we are accessing the pelvic area, maybe creating sensations around the hips. Could be buttocks, could be thighs. But it might be that you just feel this along the spine, and that is absolutely perfect. Or maybe you just feel this around the shoulders. Maybe there's tension around the shoulders that you need to release today. That is, again, absolutely perfect if that's what you feel that you need today. You can still continue playing with that tilting of the pelvis. If you feel that the pose is going too much into that area around the hips, you might tilt your pelvis less. So maybe you kind of start to pull back a bit, bringing the pelvis more towards the neutral where we started from. Or you might play with tilting the pelvis further forward, again kind of showing your tail behind you. That might bring more sensations around the buttocks, the thighs. If you start to feel pain or any pinching, sharp sensations around your joints, in the hips, in the knees, in the ankles, then those sensations are a sign that we need to adjust the pose. We're not trying to push into the joints. Trying to access bigger, longer lines and areas. And of course, breath is still there. It keeps flowing in, it keeps flowing out. Just notice that gentle wave of in-breath sliding in, opening up some space from the inside. And the exhalation sliding out, releasing tension, softening any kind of holding. If you notice that you're holding the pose with tension, let your exhalation soften that effort, that holding. And you can always adjust the pose if needed. I'm suggesting we take another minute here, another 5 to 10 slow, calm breaths in and out. But if you feel that it's been long enough for you, or if there's any pain, you can always come out of the pose earlier. We are practicing with kindness, so don't feel that you need to push yourself. Rather listen to your body. Trying to find what's good for you today. What's good for you might not suit someone else. So what is good for me might not be good for you, and that's absolutely fine. Find your own practice. And then either after your 5 to 10 breaths, or when you feel ready to slowly come out of the pose, take a slightly bigger breath in as you start to roll your spine, your neck, your head up. And you could take a moment in an upright seat, or you could step hands behind the pelvis, lean onto your hands, and just gently release your legs from that cross-legged seat. And give yourself a moment to breathe here. Give yourself a moment to rebound and notice how you feel now. If you feel that you need to move, you want to move, you could step your feet on the mat and swing the legs a few times from side to side. So bringing some movement to that hip area. You might also turn head from side to side. Maybe you felt the pose more along the spine. You can allow your spine to move. And then we're going to do that forward bend, but with legs crossed the other way. So now, trying to remember which leg you had in front on the first side. Now we're going to change legs the other way around. And it doesn't mean that you have identical shape on this side. It might be that you want to cross the legs more, cross the legs less. Maybe you're pointing, flexing the ankles in a different way. Maybe there's a different angle in your knees. So let yourself adjust the shape so you feel there's no pain in the knees, there's no pain in the hip joints. And then again, we'll start with that tilt forward in the pelvis. So slowly start to lean the pelvis, tilt the pelvis forward. You could step hands in front of you. And already there, you might start to feel some sensations, maybe around the buttocks, thighs. And you might decide you pause there. Maybe that's plenty enough for your forward bend today. Or you might decide you want to round your spine further down and forward. And you might use some props under the chest, under the head if you want. You might turn your head to one side or the other. And this side might be completely different. Again, allow some time to find how much
you need to tilt your pelvis on this side, how much you need to or you want to round your spine on this side. Notice the breath. Is it easy to breathe? Breath is a great checkpoint as well. If you find that it's difficult to breathe, if you find yourself holding your breath, then maybe we're pushing the pose too far. So leave space for your breath, encouraging the ease of breathing. You could send your breaths all the way down towards the hips. Maybe breathing along the back side of your body. Breathing down towards the lower back, down towards the back of the pelvis. As if you could breathe all the way into your buttocks, your thighs. And with each breath out, just allow yourself to soften and let go of tension you don't need right now. And that tension could be somewhere else. Could be in your fingers, could be on the face, could be in the neck. So allow yourself to release all that tension that you don't need right now for this forward bend. And let's spend another 5 to 10 breaths in this forward bend. And towards the end of those 5 to 10 breaths, give yourself a couple of just slightly bigger, slightly deeper breaths in and out. Preparing yourself for the next transition. And then when you feel ready to do so, slowly start to help your back, your neck, your head up and out of that forward bend. You could move your props aside, release the legs, and then we're going to go lie down on the back. So any easy way, bring yourself onto your back. And again, you could either just take a moment to rest, to observe, notice how you feel now. Or if you feel that some movement would be good, you could again bend the knees and do a few of those swings, those windshield wipers here, lying down on the back. You can allow your spine to twist if you want. The movement could be bigger as well. And then when you feel ready to start looking for a twist, you could first bring legs to center, bend both knees. And now if you have your bolster or pillow or blocks there, you bring them to your left side. So your props are waiting for you on the left side in case you want to use them. We're going to go into a reclining twist, and you'll have a couple of options for the legs. So you could have your legs next to each other, bring both legs to the left side of the mat, maybe on top of a bolster, or maybe you don't use the bolster, you just bring your legs all the way down onto the floor, onto the mat. Or the other option would be to bring legs into the twisted roots or the eagle shape. If you want to do that, then cross your right leg on top and around the left leg. And then with that crossing in the legs, bring your legs onto the left side of the mat. You can either onto the floor or bring a bolster there under the legs. And then wherever your legs are, open your chest up towards the ceiling. You could open your right arm to the right side of the mat. With that crossing in the legs, we might be able to access a bit more the outside of the right hip, maybe the outside of the right thigh. And you can still adjust your props. Maybe you start it with a bolster, and as we stay longer, you might at some point push that bolster, that prop away. Or it might go the other way around. Maybe you start without a prop, but as we stay longer, the pose might get more and more intense, and you might want to bring a prop in and give a bit of extra support in the pose so that you can stay longer, so that the pose doesn't become too intense. So you can always adjust, you can make changes in the pose. Head can turn to one side or the other. And again, find your breath. Just observe that natural breath. Allowing out breaths to soften tension. You could let yourself breathe all the way down to that pelvic area. If at any point you start to feel the pose is maybe too intense for the shoulders, you might adjust your arms. Maybe you bring your arms lower down. Maybe you step that right hand onto your belly. We still have about minute and a half in this twist. You might make changes. You might adjust your props. Send your breaths to those areas of your body where you feel the pose most. Give yourself a few more breaths. Maybe a few slightly deeper, slower breaths. And then when you feel ready to start releasing your twist, you could either roll onto your back, or you might roll onto your side, onto your left side. If you have legs in that crossed, twisted around each other shape, just release that crossing and give yourself a moment to rest, whether it's on your side or on your back. Just allowing that time for you to notice how you feel here after that twist. Where do you feel the pose now? And then slowly, in your own time, bring yourself to lie down on the back as we prepare for the twist on the other side. If you have
your props that you used on the first side, you can now move them to your right side. So if you had some props there for the legs, you can move now them to the right side of the mat, just so that if you want to use them as we go into that twist on the other side, you can use them there. And the same options, either legs next to each other, or you can now cross the left leg on top and around the right leg. And then we'll bring both legs to the right side of the mat. Maybe you bring props under the legs. Maybe you push the props aside. You just want to bring legs all the way down onto the mat. And then open your chest. Maybe open the left arm out to the left side of the mat. And find that twist on the other side. And you can make choices here. Are you exploring more the outside of your left hip, left thigh? Do you want to send the twist more to the spine? You can still play with if you use a prop under the legs or not. Maybe you really want to focus more on the left shoulder, and then you play with how much you open that arm, that shoulder out to the side. So find your shape, find your twist. And then let yourself kind of pause in that pose. See where the pose takes you. As you stay longer, the sensations might change. The way you breathe might change. And that's all okay. We're here more to observe than do. So there's not a lot of doing in our yin pose. Give yourself this time to observe. Give yourself time to pause, relax in that pose. And if the sensations become too intense, you can always pull back. Maybe it's with a bolster, using it under the legs here, even under the shoulders, head, if that helps you. Or you might decide you want to come out of the pose earlier. That's an option as well. Make sure there's no pain. We're not here to hurt the body. We are here to look after the body. Give yourself another 5 to 10 breaths in your twist, wherever you are. Or again, if you want to come out of the pose earlier, feel free to release the twist. But if it still feels good, manageable, take a few more breaths, maybe a few just slightly deeper breaths in and out. And then to come out of the twist, now on the second side, I am going to suggest that we roll on to the right side. So curl towards the legs, onto your right side. And then if you have your legs crossed in that twisted shape, you could release that twist. You can push any props aside if needed. And take a couple of breaths on your side. You could bring your right hand, arm under the head as a pillow. And then with your next few breaths, from lying down on your side, bring yourself to lie down on your belly. So from your side, just slide to lie down on your front.
You could check your props are nearby in case you want to use them in the next couple of poses. And then take a few breaths lying down on the belly. Maybe hands under the head or one cheek on the mat. And just rock the pelvis from side to side. See if you want your legs to be wider apart, closer together. Where do you feel you could soften the hips, where the lower back is rather happy? And then our next longer pose is going to be the half frog with an option to go into a sphinx pose together with the half frog. So for the spine, you'll have options. On the first side of our half frog, we're going to start rotating the right hip open and bend the right knee, and then slide the right knee along the floor to the right side of the mat. You could bring your knee to hip height. It could go higher, it could stay lower. You might extend your right leg further out to the side if that feels good. Now looking for some sensations in the inner thigh area, maybe the groin area, without hurting in the hip. So if there's any pinch in the hip, let yourself adjust. And then once you've found that place, take a couple of breaths in and out. Notice if you want to flex or point your ankle, your foot. And you can stay here. You can keep your chest, your head down, close to the mat. Or with your next couple of breaths, you could slowly bring yourself into a sphinx pose, into a back bend, with bringing weight onto your elbows, your forearms, lifting your chest, your head off the mat. So we could have this back bend added. That's very optional though. See if that affects how you feel around the hip or hips. And then settle in for a couple of minutes wherever you are. Notice a breath. Invite your awareness, your focus to your breath. You could send your breaths all the way down to the lower belly. You could maybe all the way down to the pelvic floor. Softening through the shoulders, through the neck. And if you start to feel the pose is too long, it's sinking too deep into your body, at any point you can release either the back bend or that opening in the right hip. So again, don't force yourself. You could give yourself another 5 to 10 breaths wherever you are in your pose. And also notice what's going on around that left hip, left leg. You might feel the pose on the left side as well. So it's not just all for the right. Notice what's going on the left side of your body. And then either after your 5 to 10 breaths, or when you feel that you're ready, you want to come out of your sphinx, your half frog, first slowly bring your chest down. Release the upper body. Bring your head down and then slowly slide your right leg
back down closer to the left leg and take a moment to rest. Just notice how the right and the left side feel. How symmetrical, how asymmetrical you feel. If you feel that you want to move here, you could bend your knees, you could swing your shins, your feet from side to side. So this is like the windshield wipers, but lying down on the belly. You can give yourself a few more breaths here. There's no rush to the next pose. Often in life we are rushing from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. With your yin practice, let yourself slow down and notice what's going on in between the poses, what's going on in between those things. And then that can also inform what you're going to do on the second side of the pose. So when you feel ready, we're going to find that half frog on the other side. So start with both legs extended and then rotate the left hip open, start to bend the left knee, just sliding the left knee, the left leg to the left side of the mat. Again, how high up, how low down that left knee is in relation to your hips, that's up to you. Do you want to flex, point your ankle, your foot? Or maybe you want to extend the left leg a bit further out to the side. Give yourself time to adjust in the beginning of the pose. And then once you're happy with where the leg is, then you'll have the option for your upper body. Do you want to stay down, keeping your head to your chest close to the mat? Or with your next couple of breaths, would you like to come back to that sphinx, adding that back bend for your upper body, bringing weight on your elbows, your forearms. And you might make a different choice on the second side. So what you did on the first side, that was its own pose. Now you have a new pose. Let yourself go in with fresh ideas and just observe how you feel. Let those sensations guide you. And if there's pain, don't push through the pain. Let yourself then adjust. And then just find your breath. Notice your breath. Softening through the neck, softening through the shoulders. Maybe you still need to adjust. As I often say, although we are encouraging stillness in our yin poses, in our yin practice, it doesn't mean that you are stuck. If what you feel in your body is suggesting that you need to make a change or come out of the pose, then let yourself follow those sensations. And again, maybe you make different choices on the second side. We could stay another minute and a half here, if you want. See where the pose takes you. And let yourself stay curious while you are in the pose. Observe if the sensations maybe travel to another area of your body, or maybe the sensations become more intense.
or maybe more gentle as you stay longer. Just observe. Let yourself observe without judgment. There's never one right or wrong way to feel. And those sensations can also change from one day to another, from one practice to another. And then with your next few breaths, if you are still in that half frog, in that sphinx, you could slowly start to release the pose. So if you have your spine in that back bend, slowly bring your chest, your head down first. Lean your head down and then start to release the left leg. Find your left leg closer to the right leg and take a few breaths, either just resting on your belly, or you could move, you could rock the pelvis from side to side. And then when you feel ready, maybe you need several breaths for this lying down in between pose. But when you feel ready, we are going to roll down onto the back. So whichever way feels easy, feels natural to you, we're going to slowly, from the belly, roll down onto the back. And then we're going to reach for the bolster or some other props that you might have there. Because we still have one more pose for the hips, for the pelvic area, and that is our supported bridge. So once you are lying down on your back, bend your knees, step your feet on the mat, and then reach for your prop, whether that's a block, bolster, some pillows. And slowly elevate your pelvis off the mat so that you can bring your prop or props under the pelvis. So I'm bringing my bolster under the pelvis, and then lean your pelvis, or it could be pelvis and lower back, onto that support, onto that prop. So that without tensing your legs, without tensing your buttocks, you have elevated your pelvis off the mat. Creating some gentle opening at the front of the hips, lower belly area, and this could be plenty enough. This is also quite relieving for the pelvic floor, as we have now elevated the pelvic floor a bit higher up. However, if you want to explore different sensations around the hips, maybe thighs, you could start to slowly extend your legs. It could be extending one leg, leaving the other leg bent. I'll let you know when we're halfway through, so if you are deciding an asymmetrical shape in the legs, I'll let you know when we're halfway through. You might also decide to extend both legs. Or the last option would be to bring legs into a butterfly shape. So bring soles of the feet together, knees bent, turn knees out to the sides. See where you want to go with your pose. And then hands and arms could stay low down. You can also bring them overhead, along the floor, along the mat. And then check in with your breath again. Notice where you feel this pose. Maybe this is for your hips. And definitely with your choices, you can send the sensations more to the hip area. Or maybe this is more for your spine. Maybe now you realize you need to focus on your spine, focus on that back bend happening in the lower back. Maybe this is more for your shoulders. Just find what you need in this moment and then let yourself focus on that. You can also play with how wide apart or how close together your legs are. And could let your breath slide all the way up towards the belly, all the way up towards the pelvic floor. Exhalation sliding down towards your neck, towards your throat, out through the nose or mouth. And we are now about halfway through our time in this supported bridge. So if you are doing an asymmetrical version, kind of legs in an asymmetrical shape, or maybe arms in an asymmetrical shape, this would be a good time to change your legs the other way around. Maybe you had one leg bent, one leg extended. This would be a good time to change them the other way around. Or even if you're doing a symmetrical version, maybe you just want to explore a different shape for the second half of the pose. Allow yourself to make those changes. And after a change, then just find your way back to your breath. Let your mind, your thoughts rest in observing the breath. Let your thoughts stay on your mat in your practice. Exhalation, softening tension, releasing effort. Again, if you notice that you're holding the pose, see if you could find a softer, more effortless way to rest in the pose. And we could spend another 5 to 10 breaths in this supported bridge. If you're still there and if you want to spend a moment longer, give yourself those few more breaths to exhale tension, to soften effort that you don't need in this moment. And then towards the end of those 5 to 10 breaths, if you have one or both legs extended, slowly bend the knees, bring your feet back onto the mat, or close the hips from a butterfly shape. If you have arms overhead, slide your arms lower down and then slowly elevate your pelvis off the bolster or block any props you have there. Bring your props to the side of the mat so you could release your back, your pelvis down. Now, you could slide straight into your Shavasana pose if you feel that nothing is needed here. But if you feel that you need to round your back or maybe swing the legs a bit, you are welcome to take a moment for your own movement, your own pose. So you might hug the knees in. If you feel that you need to do a counter pose after that long bridge. Or you might do a few windshield wipers, swing the legs from side to side. Maybe movement is what you need right now. Anything, everything you need to then find your way into one more stillness, into your Shavasana pose. And that Shavasana pose could be lying down on the back. You could bring a bolster, a pillow under the legs if that helps your lower back.
Or if you don't want to lie down on your back, you could also come lie down on your belly. Or maybe there's a completely different pose, completely different shape that you need right now for your resting pose. Find an easy pose. You might close your eyes. And once more, invite your awareness to your breath. Invite your awareness inwards to yourself. Let yourself notice how you feel now as we are slowly coming towards the end of the practice. And just let yourself rest here. Let yourself rebound at the end of the practice. If you can remember how you felt in the beginning of the practice, notice if something has changed. If you feel different now, but I can make those observations without any judgment. We're not looking for a change in our practice. We're just looking for that space and time to observe, to pause, to notice what's going on. So give yourself another moment here to observe yourself, observe how you feel now. Let any thoughts come in, but then also let them move out. Don't attach yourself to any thoughts or ideas. And if you find yourself wandering off the mat with your thoughts, then just bring yourself back to your breath. Bring yourself back to observing what's happening right here, right now in your body, in your breath. And let your mind rest in that observation just a moment longer. Give yourself another 5 to 10 breaths wherever you are in your resting pose. As you arrive to the end of those 5 to 10 breaths, if you notice that you're not quite ready to let go of your Shavasana pose yet, then stay there longer. You can take as long as you want, as long as you need today. Or if you feel that it's time for you to slowly start to come out of your resting pose, take a couple of slightly bigger, deeper breaths in and out, and start to bring some gentle movement to your fingers, your toes. You could move your hands, your feet. If you want, you can gently lengthen arms and legs away from each other. Just any movements that you feel would help you to wake up your body from that resting pose. And when you feel ready to do so, in your own time, slowly roll down onto one side and start to find your way up into a seat, into your own final seat. It could be a similar pose you had in the very beginning of the practice when we started off in our seated pose. Or you might find a different seat now. You can also sit on a bolster. Leave your hips, leave your back, leave your shoulders soft. And give yourself another few breaths here. Slowly, breath by breath, letting go of your practice. If it's a part of your practice, you might bring your palms together in front of the chest. And as always, at the end of the practice, most importantly, thank yourself for taking this time to slow things down, to check in with yourself and to look after yourself. And I thank you very much for joining in, for sharing this time, sharing this practice, and I hope you feel good. I hope you feel a bit more rested now. Namaste. Thank you.